Hey, this is Keith from Save the Rust. So today we have Jim, and he just completed his 1950 new Hudson Autocycle. And we're going to go through it, and he's going to tell us all the stuff he did. Jim last winter got parts of this bike off me. I had one already done, and a bunch of pieces, including frames and front ends, wheels, etc., a couple motors. But Jim restored this thing, made parts, casted parts. He's going to tell you all about it. Follow along. So Jim, tell us something about your bike here. Why did you choose to have this, to restore this new Hudson and go through all this process for a 98cc single speed motorcycle from Great Britain?
Okay, well, it's a long story, but I've been riding motorcycles for 60 years. And my first one 60 years ago was one of these, same year, same make, same model. I couldn't tell what color it was because it was covered in red barn paint. But I quit smoking in the winter and wanted to spend my money on something and keep my hands busy. So I decided to celebrate 60 years of motorcycling by restoring one of these, and Keith had some pieces. He gave me my pick of frames and my pick of the wrong wheels and many different things. And I took what I could and modified, fixed, repaired, and made where I had to until I got a whole motorcycle. And that's it, my new Hudson.
That's awesome. So some of the parts that you had to fabricate, which ones were they?
Okay, well, I'm going to show you on the other side. I think this is the most interesting. This is a piece off Keith's motorcycle that I used as a pattern, and I cast a new one out of aluminum. So that's the sprocket cover, and it's a copy of his. I even got the part number in the casting.
That's awesome.
I couldn't find levers for it. These inverted levers are quite a bit smaller than anything you can buy on eBay. So I cast those from wooden patterns. It's sand cast aluminum. I have a little crucible furnace. I melt it down in the shop and pour it into the sand and polish it up.
And those are the brake levers?
These are the brake levers, and strange, it's English. This is the rear brake where you expect the front. Front brake on the left. Everything's on the handlebars. There's no foot controls at all because you've got to pedal the thing when the engine quits.
So the pedal doesn't have a brake like a bicycle?
Brake, it's just freewheeling around. Everything's done on the handlebars. The throttle is a fixed lever. You set the position just like an outboard motor. Decompression, just for a mighty engine when you have to stop it. Clutch, and it has only one speed. It's always in gear, so you lock the clutch out to make it idle, standing still. And then the brakes. So you've got 5 different functions on the handlebars, nothing on the feet. The gas tank, I painted it, and then I took it for pinstriping, and the guy who did the pinstriping said, "We can make that shine," and he sure made it shine.
Yeah.
Ian Croker, just over here by the floodway, painted that. Beautiful job. I did all the rest of it. The license plate holders, Keith had paper patterns, so I made them out of steel from paper patterns. The gas cap, that's my little billet gas cap. You take a chunk of aluminum, put it in your lathe and start turning it, because you can't find a new Hudson gas cap. You make them.
Even though I had like 5 gas tanks and I didn't have one single gas cap.
The brakes are a bit of an issue. They're massive 4-inch drum brakes, soaked in grease because there's no seal between the wheel bearing and the brake shoe except for a little felt ring. Doesn't really keep the grease out, so all the shoes I had collected were greasy. I soaked them in brake cleaner. Left them 3 weeks, then I threw them in a pile of clay and dried them out, so they sort of stopped now, but not real powerful brakes. And of course your first reaction is try pedaling backwards like a bicycle. It doesn't slow down at all.
So the crank, you were telling me, because when I sold you all the parts, we didn't have a crank.
That's right, yeah. No, that's, the funny thing is, 1950 British motorcycle, in fact probably older than that, British bicycles, used a strange 24 thread per inch, 1 3/8 inch diameter for the pedal mechanism. The Japanese modern bikes use the same thing. So this is actually the lower bottom bracket, they call it, from a more modern bicycle. I couldn't get a sprocket arrangement, so I actually had that sprocket welded to the pedal to make a gear setup for this thing on the bicycle side. The adjusters and stuff back here, I just fabricated them, and then I nickel plate them on the kitchen stove. It's you warm the solution, put some electricity through it, and you plate them. So
And you made the chain guards?
yeah, that one is a bicycle one modified, nothing special there. This one was a piece of 20 gauge steel, and I hammered it over a oak form to get that one.
So like a wooden buck?
Yeah, wooden buck. Actually, you sandwich it. You make one buck the shape, and you put a flat one the same size, just so it doesn't wrinkle up when you're doing the curve. That takes a fair bit of hammering to get it to go over like that.
Nice. And then your chain adjuster, that one's...
That's all like stock, but I made it from scratch.
Yeah.
Yeah, just a idler sprocket. I'm not sure what the sprocket comes from, but I was able to find it.
And then wheels, you had a bit of a time getting wheels.
Yeah.
Because of the size?
And the tires themselves. There's only one place you get the tires. That's eBay in Britain, and you pay the shipping to get them over. They're 21 inch, 225 by 21. But the wheel I got from Keith was an 18, I think. So basically I took a spare wheel he had, a back wheel, took the rim off, found the right spokes, and spoked it to the hub from the 18-inch wheel.
Oh, yeah.
So it's sort of put together wheel, but worked out well.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And then you just telling me you made the toolbox?
The tool bag, yes. That's you go to Value Village and find a nice purse made of good leather and start sewing. I didn't know how to sew until this last week. I did that.
Oh, yeah. So what do you got in there?
Ah, man. The essentials. I took out the hammer. You know the hammer wrench for taking off the flywheel?
Yeah.
I was going to carry it, but I'm never going to take the flywheel off on the side of the road. So I took it out because it's the heaviest tool you can imagine.
Yeah.
You know you've got one.
Yeah, the hammer tight.
The hammer type.
Yeah, so in case you didn't know, this is a cover on the flywheel, and when you take this off, what's really neat about these flywheels is it's got a double
self-pulling.
Yeah, well, you explain it, Jim, since you're fresh on this. It's been a while since I even had to think about it.
I'll explain it because that's why I got rid of my first one when I was 14 years old, because I didn't know about this. But you put the wrench on the center nut and crack it loose, and it comes loose about 2 turns, and then it starts getting tight again. And what the heck's that? Well, it backs up until it pulls against another shoulder, and you just give the center a little tap, and the flywheel pops off. The nut itself is the puller. When I was 14, I didn't know that. I put a 3-jaw puller on a brass flywheel, bent it, and that was the end of my new Hudson.
Yeah.
But this is my favorite thing. I made up a wrench for the spark plug because if you look, the spark plug doesn't clear the gas tank by enough to put a rubber boot on it.
Oh, yeah.
So the plug is actually held on with a nut. This end takes the nut off. This is shallow enough to slip over there, and I can actually unscrew the plug without lifting the tank.
That's cool.
Yeah.
You got some vintage KLG plugs in there?
Oh, yes, I know a guy who has these things.
And so, for everyone else out there, what is this?
That's the decompressor, which I think is supposed to stop when it's over half throttle. It keeps running even with that, but you hear the whistle blowing off compression.
Yeah.
When you're down low speed, you can pull it and it stops the engine nice and clean. You don't have to stall it out or anything.
So you just pull on this lever?
Yeah.
And then what that does is it
actually lifts the plunger downward, opens it up to compression, and it blows off in between the head gasket and there. And I think my head gasket is blocking the passage, is why mine doesn't work that good.
Oh, yeah.
I think I have to cut a little slot in the head gasket
Just
to let it bleed. I'm not worried about it because I can just shut it down by turning the throttle down to nothing.
So what else is planned for the winter on this? Since
Do I have time to go to my car?
yes.
The side shields.
So what's really nice is getting the chance to give and sell some parts to a fellow enthusiast who takes these pieces and does this to a bike. That makes all the difference in the world when you actually see a project that you sold parts to back on the road. That's what Saving the Rust is all about.
British nurses didn't want to get their uniforms dirty, all the road stuff and stuff off the engine, so they had leg shields fitted to these things to cover the engine. So this is a pattern for one, and I'm actually going to look, because I know Keith has the real one, and see if the pattern's accurate.
Yeah, I've got a couple of new old stock, just the right sides, I believe.
I think it sort of spoils the looks. I really like the looks of the flywheel when it's running.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it's just a cool thing. We used to have a old black lab when I was 14, and the lab would come and put his paws on here and rub his belly on the wheel as it idled.
What's cool is some of the parts that we, Jim was over a few times over the winter trying to, source a few pieces, and one of the best parts that we found hanging in the basement, new old stock, was what, Jim?
The front fender, there it is. The glorious. I didn't even paint it. That's the way it was. I did touch up that part right there. Yes.
So I had found this years ago, and it, this is exactly the kind of project that it deserved to go on, So nice to see that. And then one other part we found, eh?
Oh, yes, which it's standing on. And Keith was not aware that that was the proper one for it. It had a welded up thing, wasn't pretty.
Yeah.
But on his
years ago,
beams, there it was.
Years ago, I got a bunch of center stands, and that was in it. And even though I had a new Hudson, I never recognized it. So Jim spotted it, and now it's on the bike, which is great.
Yes. And that's how you start it. You start it on the center stand. There's no Kickstarter. It's a pedal start. I didn't know that when I was a kid. I used to just ride it like a bicycle and dump the clutch. But it seems like a lot of work for an old guy, so now I found out you can start it on the center stand.
Well, you'll have to start it for us and go through the procedure on this. So Jim's going to go through the starting procedure on the 1950 New Hudson.
So basically it doesn't have a transmission. It's a one-speed. The only thing it's got is a clutch to disengage it or engage it. So the normal starting procedure when I was 14 was to ride it like a bicycle, holding the clutch in, drop the clutch, and hope it started. Now I've watched the videos. The Brits all still ride these things. You put the clutch out. You make sure the gas is turned on. You choke it if you need to. That's the choke mechanism. Set the throttle and give it a mighty pedal. Back wheels on full speed.
Yeah.
Put on the clutch. Put on the brake. As you can see what I mean. You can put it on the ground. Except that that slips.
Yeah.
Quite exciting.
So show us how you take this for a little ride, Don.
Some people think you have to pedal and you don't really.
Get to the end of it. So I just want to say thanks for Jim for coming out, letting me ride it, and showing us his great restoration of this bike. 60 years ago, he had one, came up to me this winter, and he wanted to recreate that experience, those memories, and happy to help him. Jim, awesome restoration. Super happy you got this bike all done, and super proud that you started with what you started with to what it is today.
I'm just glad I know you. Couldn't have done it without anything like that. Keith's amazing, and I was over here more times than enough just looking at his to see what it's supposed to look like, and very thankful for that too.
Oh,
anyway, thanks a lot.
No problem. Just happy to see it done. Another one back on the road, and Save the Rest had a little help in it, but because this is what we do, and this is who we are. So thanks again, Jim, and have a great day.